Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. 1 year on since the start of the horrific genocide in the Arakan state of Myanmar, the Rohingya women and children remain homeless, helpless, hungry and desperate.
They, alongside their men, have been the victims of a ruthless, systematic campaign of ethnic cleansing at the hands of ethnic Buddhists, aided and abetted by the murderous Burmese regime, whose security forces have turned a blind eye to the appalling atrocities against the Rohingya Muslims and directly taken part in the attacks.
The violence that the Rohingya women and children have been subjected to has been truly horrific.
Their villages have been burnt to the ground, and there has been torture and massacres where Muslims, including children, have been hacked to pieces and their bodies burnt. Hundreds have been killed. In the Yin Thay massacre last October, dozens of women and children were slaughtered in cold blood.
As with Syria, systematic rape against the Rohingya women and girls has been used as a tool of war by Arakan Buddhists and Burmese security forces in order to instigate fear amongst the Muslims to cause them to flee their state.
In February this year, The Guardian reported that at least 13 Rohingya Muslim women, including teenagers, were subjected to an ordeal of prolonged rape and torture by Burmese security forces that lasted from midnight till dawn.
As a consequence of this violence, tens of thousands of Rohingya Muslims have been displaced from their homes.
140,000 now live in squalid prison-like refugee camps in the Rakhine state, including thousands of women and children, as part of a strategy of forced segregation implemented by the Burmese government. They have inadequate food and access to medical care, and the Burmese authority is even hindering aid organizations from entering the camp. Those women and children who continue to live in their homes face the prospect of a slow death from starvation, as their men are not permitted to leave their villages to seek work to feed their families. Children are starving and they have no access to medical treatment.
However, all this is just the latest spate of violence against the Rohingya Muslims, who have suffered a long history of persecution, massacres, discrimination and displacement at the hands of successive Burmese governments, who have tried for centuries to expel the Rohingya population from the country through harsh social policies.
In 1982, the Burmese authority passed the citizenship law that denied citizenship to the Rohingya, rendering them foreign immigrants in their own land, a land in which they have lived since the 8th century. They became stateless with no legal status, no right to property and deprived of the right to employment or free movement in the country. Rohingya women and children therefore face lives today of desperate poverty, with no access to state education or healthcare. Their lands have been confiscated and they have been evicted from their homes. They live in slums with little food and without clean water, sanitation and other basic needs. Sexual violence by the Nasaka, the Burmese security border guards, against Rohingya women has also been documented for many years. Prosecutions of such crimes are rare, and hence they have been allowed to continue these heinous acts with impunity.
Alongside this, the Burmese government has implemented harsh policies to stem the growth of the Rohingya Muslim population as another weapon of its ethnic cleansing strategy.
Rohingya women need permission from the government to marry and have also been subjected to an oppressive birth control policy that restricts them to having only 2 children, punishable by a fine and even imprisonment if broken, resulting in some Rohingya women resorting to abortions to avoid such punishments. It is a policy that the Rakhine state authorities announced this May that they would enforce with more vigour.
Despite all this, the international community, the UN, Western democratic states, the global media, and even many human rights organizations have chosen shamefully to ignore this genocide, even though the UN itself described the Rohingya as the most persecuted minority in the world.
In fact, many Western leaders have praised the current Burmese president, Thein Sein, for his democratic reforms. The same leader who has expressed his intent to continue to pursue this oppressive policy of ethnic cleansing of Rohingya Muslims from his shores, stating in a meeting with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees last July that he wanted to assemble the members of the Rohingya community into camps until they are expelled from the country. He also said, "It is not possible to accept Rohingya who entered the country illegally. They are not from our race." Even the Burmese democratic opposition have been notably silent in their condemnation of the vicious attacks against their Muslim population.
It is clear that the call for democracy does not include a call to protect the blood and life of minorities. This is not surprising, for with such democratic states and institutions, the support of dictatorships is simply a question of economics, not humanity. It's a matter of opening up new markets for business, rather than taking a principled stance to safeguard human life and dignity.
In the midst of the Burmese regime's continued brutal violence and crippling social policies against the Rohingya Muslims, the European Union lifted its trade and economic sanctions on Burma this April. The US has also removed the majority of its sanctions against investment in the country and has moved to boost trade ties with Myanmar. As Western capitalist democratic states scramble to reap the potential financial rewards in Burma, it is clear that they view the lives of the Rohingya Muslim women and children as an insignificant matter that is worth nothing compared to securing their capitalist economic goals, demonstrating once again that their priority lies in protecting financial gain over human life and dignity, and exposing democracy's empty talk of human rights.
To escape the persecution and brutal violence, thousands of Rohingya women and children have fled abroad in rickety, leaky boats, risking a treacherous sea journey to reach a place of safety and refuge.
Some pregnant women have even given birth at sea, while some children have been forced to travel alone, reaching their destination in a state of starvation and dehydration. You can appreciate the true desperation of the Rohingya mothers when they are willing to risk their children drowning or starving to death at sea than remain in their homes in Myanmar.
However, despite being rendered stateless, having nowhere to turn, and having experienced the most cruel acts of brutality, the Rohingya women and children have been abandoned by the heartless rulers and regimes of the Muslim world, who have subjected them to yet another face of oppression.
The governments in Bangladesh, Malaysia and Indonesia, instead of standing by the oppressed, have added to their suffering. They have either refused them entry, pushing them back to the sea to drown or to be killed in Burma.
"Oh Allah, save us, they cry. But the officers aren't listening. "They'll kill me," says this man. An officer from the Coast Guard replies, "Allah will save you. Now go back."
Or they have placed them in overcrowded detention camps where the dignity of the Rohingya Muslim women have been violated. Or they denied them legal status, treating them like foreign immigrants rather than as brothers and sisters in a manner no different to the Burmese government, where they are denied employment, education, healthcare or freedom of movement and live in constant fear of arrest and deportation. Such governments, along with all other Muslim rulers and regimes, even those drowning in wealth, have stood silent and idle, unmoved, while Rohingya Muslim women and children are dishonoured, tortured, killed and starved, failing to provide them a safe haven where their needs can be met with dignity.
This is due to their corrosive nationalistic system and policies.
blinded by such nationalism that divides and dehumanizes. They have failed to defend the blood of the Myanmar Muslims and refuse them adequate refuge, viewing them as people from a foreign nation who are a burden to their economy, rather than, as Islam obliges, as brothers and sisters to whom they have a great responsibility to take care of. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Hujurat, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ, the believers are but a single brotherhood. And as the Prophet ﷺ has said, the Muslim is the brother of his fellow Muslim. He does not oppress him, nor does he abandon him.
So who will save the Rohingya women and children? Brothers and sisters, this ummah is one ummah. The Rohingya problems are our problems. And unlike the international community and the Muslim regimes, we cannot abandon them to their oppressors and their oppression. So the Central Media Office of Hizb Tahrir, in coordination with Hizb Tahrir Malaysia, will be hosting an important women's seminar in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia this July that will gather influential women from across Southeast Asia, including journalists, politicians, human rights activists, lawyers and representatives of organizations, amongst other female opinion makers, to bring attention to the global media and the world the desperate plight of our sisters in Burma.
We will seek to raise awareness of their horrendous suffering, demand of the governments of the Muslim world that they cut ties with the Burmese government and open up their borders to the Rohingya Muslims, protecting them and providing them status as equal citizens of their state.
And we will raise the call for this ummah to intensify its efforts to establish the Khilafah state, which, through its full implementation of Islam, will reject nationalism, eradicating the artificial Western-imposed borders between our countries, uniting our lands as our hearts are united.
A system that will not only grant persecuted Muslims a safe place to live with dignity, providing them shelter, food and rights as equal citizens of the state, but also unite our Muslim armies, mobilizing them to protect the blood of Muslims living under occupation or oppression, ending their bloodshed wherever they may be. For it is the Khilafah system alone that views the Muslim as a Muslim, regardless of nationality, ethnicity and race. Indeed, it is the absence of this system that gives courage to the Burmese government and all other governments to persecute Muslims. And it is the re-establishment of the Khilafah that will cause nations to quiver at the mere thought of harming or dishonoring a single Muslim woman or child under their rule.
Dear brothers and sisters, we call you to raise awareness about this seminar and its issues amongst your friends, family, contacts and colleagues and the media, and to increase your efforts to establish the Khilafah that will provide a state of guardianship to the stateless under a sincere leader of the likes of the Emir of Hizb Tahrir, the eminent Mujtahid Sheikh Atta Abu Rashda, who without hesitation or delay will strive to end the suffering of the Rohingya women and children, as well as all Muslims facing oppression across the world, in the manner that only a leader that embodies Islam and a leader that implements Islam fully can achieve. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.